Daniel Reyes heard the tow truck engine roar before he even opened his front door. His heart pounded as he saw a police cruiser hooked up on his private land. Linda Whitfield stood with her arms crossed, smiling like she had won some twisted prize. She lived 3 houses down and ruled the neighborhood like her own personal kingdom. As HOA president, she believed every inch of pavement belonged under her strict control. Daniel limped down his porch steps, his prosthetic leg clicking against the worn concrete. "What is going on here?" he asked. Steady and calm. "That officer parked illegally on association property," Linda snapped. Daniel glanced at the patrol car, parked exactly where his driveway met his front yard. "This is my land," he said firmly. "Stakes near the curb." Linda scoffed, aimed directly at his patience. "Rules are rules," she said. "Not even police get special treatment from me." A young officer jogged over, looking confused and clearly unaware of what had happened. "Ma'am, vehicle without proper legal authorization," he said sharply. Linda's smile faltered slightly, though her arrogance refused to back down even slightly. "I am the HOA president," she said. "Every shared community space." Daniel stepped closer, feeling his old military training kick in beneath the rising anger. "With all due respect," he said, "entirely to me." He pointed toward the small brass plate marking his land near the mailbox post. The officer frowned, suddenly looking far less confident than he had moments earlier. "You towed my cruiser from private property," he said. "Her mistake." Linda's chin lifted defiantly, refusing to admit any wrongdoing in front of her neighbors. "This is still community business," she insisted. False confidence. Neighbors began stepping outside, drawn by the commotion echoing across the quiet morning street. Carol watched from her porch with wide, disbelieving eyes. "She's done this before," Carol whispered. "Morning air." Daniel felt his jaw tighten, memories of unfair treatment flooding back all at once. Since moving in, with petty, exhausting HOA violations, she fined him for flags, for fences. He had served his country, lost part of his leg, and built this home alone. Now this woman wanted to control even the very ground beneath his feet. The officer pulled out his radio, requesting immediate backup from his supervising sergeant. Linda's confidence cracked slightly as she realized the situation was spiraling beyond her control. You can't tow law enforcement vehicles without facing serious legal consequences, the officer warned firmly. Daniel exhaled slowly, his hands trembling slightly from years of suppressed frustration finally surfacing. "This isn't just about a tow truck," he said quietly. "This is about respect. Respect for property, for service, and for basic human decency in this community." Linda rolled her eyes, muttering something about rules being rules for everyone equally. But her voice lacked its usual confidence. faltering beneath the growing crowd's attention. More neighbors gathered. Phones raised, recording every word of the unfolding confrontation outside. Daniel knew this moment would define everything that happened next in his life. He squared his shoulders, ready to fight for what rightfully belonged to him. The morning sun glared down, casting long shadows across the tense suburban street. Somewhere inside him, a quiet strength began rising, refusing to be silenced again. This was his land, his home, and he would not back down. The sergeant arrived 20 minutes later, his expression hardening as he surveyed the scene. He asked for identification, paperwork. It actually happened. Linda straightened her blouse, attempting to regain control of the rapidly unraveling situation. "I am the HOA president," she repeated. "I'd everything." The sergeant glanced at Daniel, then back toward the towed patrol vehicle nearby. "Sir?" he asked. "Respectful." "Yes." Pulling out the deed he had grabbed before stepping outside. He unfolded the document carefully, his hands no longer trembling with quiet anger. The boundary lines are clearly marked. Surveyed. The sergeant examined the paperwork closely, his jaw tightening with growing professional concern. "Ma'am." "Property without the owner's explicit permission." Linda's face paled slightly, though she still refused to admit any fault publicly. "I was simply enforcing community parking standards," she insisted. "Yes. There are no community standards on private land," the sergeant replied, his tone firm. Carol stepped forward bravely, her voice trembling but determined to finally speak up. "She's harassed this man since he moved in, fining him for ridiculous, made-up violations. She fined him for a flagpole honoring his military service," Carol added. Other neighbors nodded, murmuring agreement. Finally finding courage to speak against years of fear, Linda spun around, glaring at Carol. "In public pressure. You're supposed to support the association," Linda hissed. "I support fairness," Carol replied calmly. "Something you've forgotten a long time ago." Daniel watched the exchange, feeling something shift powerfully within the gathered, watching crowd. For years, against Linda's relentless, unchecked abuse of power. Now, that fear was beginning to crack beneath collective frustration and quiet courage. The sergeant turned back toward Linda, his expression now noticeably colder and more serious. "Ma'am, without authorization could result in significant legal consequences for you." Linda's lips parted, searching desperately for words that no longer seemed to exist. "This is harassment." Though her voice lacked any real conviction now. "No. This is accountability. Something you've clearly avoided for too long." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. I have documentation, he said. Harassment claim against me. Photos. Emails. Pattern of targeted. Unjust treatment. The sergeant nodded slowly, clearly recognizing the seriousness of what Daniel was describing. This isn't the first complaint we've received about HOA overreach in this neighborhood. Linda's eyes widened slightly, realizing other residents had already quietly reported her behavior before. Carol placed a gentle hand on Daniel's shoulder, offering silent strength and growing solidarity. You fought for this country, she said softly. Now let us fight for you. Daniel felt his throat tighten, emotion rising after years of feeling completely alone. The crowd around them grew larger. Neighbors finally united against years of silent suffering. Linda glanced around, searching for support that simply no longer existed for her. Her authority now crumbled beneath the weight of long overdue truth. The sergeant began writing notes, documenting everything for an official department investigation report. This is far from over, Linda muttered. Fear. You're right. But not in the way you're imagining right now. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating a neighborhood finally ready for real, lasting change. Within days, with the county against Linda's HOA conduct. He submitted years of documentation, photos, and witness statements from frightened, silent neighbors. Carol organized a community meeting, encouraging others to finally share their own painful stories. One by one. Describing years of unfair fines and constant intimidation. A young immigrant family described being threatened over decorations celebrating their cultural heritage proudly. An elderly couple shared how Linda fined them for medical equipment near their home. The pattern was undeniable, painting a clear picture of relentless, targeted abuse of power. County officials launched a formal investigation into the Homeowners Association's questionable financial and legal practices. Meanwhile, an internal review regarding the unauthorized vehicle tow. Linda hired a lawyer, desperately trying to control the rapidly escalating public situation. But evidence continued mounting, exposing years of selective enforcement and personal vendettas against residents. Daniel testified calmly during the hearing, his voice steady despite years of suppressed frustration. He spoke about serving his country, losing part of his leg, and finding peace here. He spoke about how Linda had tried stealing that peace through relentless, petty harassment. The room fell silent, moved by his quiet strength and unwavering, dignified resolve. The board, undeniable truth, voted unanimously to remove Linda from power. Her years of unchecked authority ended swiftly, stripped away by long overdue justice. She was also formally charged for ordering the unauthorized towing of police property. The fines alone proved costly, but the public humiliation cut even deeper than that. Neighbors who once feared her now watched as her carefully built image crumbled completely. Carol hugged Daniel tightly after the hearing, tears of relief streaming down her face. You did this. You finally gave all of us our voice back. Daniel shook his head gently, insisting it had always been a shared Collective victory. In the following weeks, the neighborhood transformed. Freed from years of fear and silence, new leadership took over the HOA, promising fairness, transparency. Daniel was asked to join the new board. Finally given a voice that mattered, he accepted. Facing similar injustice again. Linda watched her reputation crumble as word spread throughout the entire town. Old friends distanced themselves, embarrassed by her exposed history of cruelty and overreach. She eventually sold her home, unable to face the community she once controlled. Her departure brought quiet relief, though no one celebrated loudly or sought further conflict. Justice didn't always need celebration. Only the simple restoration of basic dignity. Months later, his newly built flagpole, finally undisturbed and respected. Carol joined him. The warm afternoon sunlight. "This is what fairness looks like," she said softly, smiling at how far they'd come. Daniel nodded. In years. Complete and lasting peace. The neighborhood he once feared had become a place of genuine belonging and respect. His struggle had not been in vain, but a powerful lesson in quiet resilience. Standing up against abuse of power often feels impossible, until enough voices finally unite. Daniel's story proved that courage, patience, unchecked authority, justice, eventually found its way into a quiet, determined veteran's life. And in the end, his peace, his own.